Hey Bethlehem, this is Pastor Paul, and you know that we've been going through the book, The Story, and we've been using the story for two reasons. First, we've been using it so that we can have a better grasp of what the Bible is about. What are the major themes? What is the narrative that the Bible is telling us? What do we need to understand? Because we believe that the better we understand who God is, his character, his purposes, his ways, the better we understand who we are and how we fit into what God is doing in this world. The second reason why we want to use the story is because we want to develop in our lives the practice of regularly reading the Bible. We believe that the Bible is God's word to us. It's his gift to his people. And for us to be good stewards of that gift, we have to read it, we have to study it, we have to talk about it in groups, we have to meditate on it, and then we have to apply it to our lives. And that way we are making the most of this wonderful gift that God has given to us. Now, this past week, we read chapter 11, which was entitled From Shepherd to King, and dealt with basically David's rise to power, to David's rise to being king. When we're looking at this section, as we ponder and meditate on it, there's what the author is trying to get us to do is really to contrast David and Saul. How can we avoid being like Saul, and how can we be more like David? And as we look here, I think there are three areas of contrast between David and Saul that help us understand how we can be more like David. And the first area is that of qualifications for being king. When it comes to Saul, his great qualification was that he looked like the king. He was handsome. He was a head taller than everybody else. He had that appearance. And David, while he was handsome, he was short. He was the runt of the family. But what God was really after was his heart. Saul may have looked like the king, but he never surrendered his heart to God. And David, while he wasn't necessarily having that kingly appearance, he had a heart that was surrendered to God, a heart that was after God's own heart. And that was what qualified him to lead God's people. And how does that apply to us? Well, that means that we need to take a look at our hearts, our motivations, what is going on in here. The second area is how they confront challenges. So Saul is confronted with the Philistines. And in 1 Samuel 14, we find him hiding with his men around a pomegranate tree, while his son Jonathan takes his armor bearer to go and fight the Philistines. Saul disengages, he hides, he lets his fear get the most of him. And the same is true then a couple chapters later, where in chapter 17, when we read about the challenge of Goliath, that Saul is the one who is capable of facing Goliath. But instead, he runs and hides in fear. He disengages. David, on the other hand, engages. He engages with the challenge. And he has this confidence that, hey, God is going to get me through this. And he goes after Goliath. What does this mean for us? Well, we need to examine the extent of our faith. See, Saul lived by his fear. David lived by his faith. We need to examine our faith. Is our faith going to be strong even in the faces of disappointment, even when things don't go our way? Are we going to continue to trust God and believe that he is going to keep his promises or not? Where is our faith? Because when we trust God, that's going to give us the confidence to face the challenges in front of us. And the third is how they handle disappointment. When Saul loses the kingdom, he becomes very jealous of David and begins to chase David and tries to kill David. David, on the other hand, trusts God. Even though things haven't turned out the way that he hoped, he trusts that God is going to make it all right. And he doesn't kill Saul when he has the chance. He believes and trusts that God will do the right thing. That in God's time, he will raise David up to being king. And for us, we need to examine what we trust in. Do we truly trust in God, or are we trusting in the things around us, the things that we can control, the things that we can manipulate? Are we going to be like Saul, or are we going to be like David? So our big idea this week is God is calling his people to be people after his heart. God is calling his people to be people after his heart, to align our wills with his will, to trust in him. Our challenge this week is to read chapter 12 of the story, which continues on with David, and then to meditate on your life and ask God what area you need to focus on. What area needs to shift? What area do you need to practice more trust in God in? Hey, Bethlehem, thank you for being part of our community. It's the week of Thanksgiving, so take some time to give your thanks to God, to show your gratitude to him for all that he has done for you. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the week. Remember, we're in person Sunday morning, 10:30. Hope to see you there. God bless.